He woke up in a dungeon cemetery, dead, forgotten, resurrected with no memory. Now he's a corpse collector for the Resurrection Temple, dragging bodies from unending labyrinths. The deeper he goes, the darker it gets, and he's already too far in to turn back. There's no hero here, just a bastard who won't stay dead. Some memories were buried for a reason. Should he really dig them up? Let's find out. This story started with Sarah spreading her arms out to the side and shouting, "Mimui vuarif." The whole group was descending into the dungeon along a long staircase. It was very dark. Then Sesmar asked Sarah, "Is there a better spell? Milva, for example?" Sarah replied that she was not going to waste her energy on just lighting. Sesmar. She put her hand behind her head and, winking, added that she could only light everything here later, when he needed healing and buffs. Maybe he should not approach her, okay? Moradin, putting his hands behind his head and smiling, remarked, "Really, why do they need healing? It would be better for them to have a good view." Bill replied, if he had nothing to say, it would be better for him to keep quiet. He already knew perfectly well that they all saw perfectly well in the dark. He grinned. Could he not even joke anymore? Sesmar told Sarah to watch her manners. Why insult her comrades? She sighed and replied, "Okay. How much longer do they have to go? Her legs are already hurting. Can he answer Prospero?" He said that he would answer her, but he himself does not know. Sarah thoughtfully said, "Is this really a dungeon?" She agrees, it does not look like someone created it, but Prospero agreed. The sight of it is really impressive. Questions just come to mind. Why? Who and how built it? Sesmar said, "They are here precisely to answer these questions," and asked Hawkwind, "Does he sense enemies?" He answered that this is not so, but they went to the next floor. No one has ever entered here before. It is unknown what awaits them there, whether they will survive or die. Only God knows all this. Maybe they will find treasure there. There are so many options. What adventurer isn't drawn by the thirst for adventure? Such is their nature, to explore the unknown in search of fame and fortune. Then Sesmar shouted, "So, we must go." He walked forward, but suddenly stopped, and Sarah crashed into him and screamed. Why did he stop so abruptly? Did he really fall into a trap and get paralyzed? He answered that they should listen. Were they really the first ones to come here? Moradin chuckled. There was no doubt. Of course they were the first. Bill added, "No one could open the door before them." So it really was so. He continued, "So the door was sealed?" Prospero confirmed it. They had just removed the seal. Sarah asked, what was wrong with him? Why such strange questions? He saw a zombie ahead and said in surprise, he just doesn't understand. What is he doing here? After some time, the leader shouted, "Is it really him too, Rodan? Why, it's unfair." Then MC entered the door and said that he was asking for forgiveness. It turns out that now there are two of them. He will take half of the items they found and the money due to the deceased. The leader walked up to him, grabbed him by the clothes and yelled, "Does he want to talk about payment now?" He replied, "Don't make a scene." They turned to ashes. Isn't he happy? The leader swung his fist and yelled, "Bastard." Sister Annika walked up to them from behind and yelled, "Enough." She put her hand to her chest and added, "God takes those who lived a good life. Their souls are now in heaven next to him." The leader threw the protagonist to the ground and asked, "Does she mean that their deaths mean nothing?" She replied, "Live well and die well. Isn't that what they say? They can't be brought back." The leader yelled, "Of course they can't be brought back. They burned their bodies after all." She said it wasn't their will. The leader was indignant. Then whose will was it? She stretched out her hand and replied, "God said they lived a good life, so there was no reason to resurrect them. They were blessed." In other words, if they paid more, if they proved that they could bring more good to this world. The leader lowered his head and said, "Of course, they could delay their deaths." Then he shouted, "Greedy fool." She shouted indignantly, "How rude." The servant turned to Yarmut and apologized for this. They had just lost two of their men. The leader was having a hard time right now. Yarmut said, they had lost a wizard and a priestess. It would be hard to replace them. He didn't blame him. It had been hard for everyone lately. The leader fell to the floor and shouted, "Damn, Rodan." The servant continued, "Yes, so they would go back there again." Yarmut continued, "Okay, but what about the payment? If they didn't pay, he wouldn't save their corpses next time." The servant handed him a bag of money. He asked him not to abandon them when he found them. The protagonist responded, "Got it." He started to leave, and Yarmut called after him to tell him not to take all the blame for this. Annika asked him what he thought was the reason for his outburst. He said it was because they had failed to resurrect his friends. She was indignant. That was impossible. He should have been happy for them. God had said they had lived better lives, so they shouldn't have been resurrected. Besides, she pointed at him and said he still hadn't made amends with God. He shouldn't think she'd forgotten that. He thanked her for resurrecting him, but she shouldn't make him responsible for it. She raised her hand and continued, "That's why God doesn't recognize him as worthy of heaven. So there are some people who should be more grateful." He said, in other words, they want him to bring more corpses, don't you, Sister Annika? In fact, he doesn't care, but he's an adventurer, not an errand boy. By the way, did they bring any of his possible comrades? She answered negatively and suggested that maybe he should stop searching. He left the castle and said, "She knows that he must find them." Otherwise, he will not be able to move on. He walked past the houses. People noticed him and said, "Yarmouth, I think?" "Damn scavenger. This is Yarmouth Blackrod. They say he was accidentally resurrected. Some are lucky. Damn marauder." Long ago in ancient times it appeared, the dungeon, another world beyond human consciousness. The abode of monsters, full of traps. In the depths of this, there is nothing but fear and despair. But this does not stop people. Many brave men decided to descend into the depths of the void, in search of fame and wealth. Some were waiting for death, some were luckier, but some still managed to adapt to this hell. People began to call them by a name, adventurers. Yarmouth stood at the entrance to the dungeon holding a map in his hands and said, "Well, how deep can he go today?" He is not the one clearing the floors. It all depends on his employers. He entered the dungeon and, seeing a corpse, asked, "Orcs?" He examined it and said, "Many non-lethal blows, newbies." And these were clearly inflicted an experienced fighter. A group of newbies led by a veteran. They must have advanced deeper. Monsters usually guard tombs and treasuries. After receiving their reward, most go to the surface until they bring down everything they have obtained. Another fact about the dungeon, each tomb is limited to one group of monsters. In other words, if the room was cleared before them, then it is safe. Looking ahead, he asked, "Is it safe? Some monsters are still alive, and the traps are set. But treasures and fame make people do stupid things. To follow someone else's path in the hope of an easy way is nonsense. But what is more absurd is that the abandoned adventurer is looking for the corpses of other adventurers." He took out a pendant, took it in his hands, and said that he would use it. Then he threw it with all his might into the depths of the dungeon corridor. The monsters saw the shine of the pendant and rushed to it, began to examine it. At this moment, the protagonist was behind them. After some time, he walked further and noticed the smell of burnt flesh. Apparently, they fell into an explosive trap while trying to open the box with the treasure, but there were no corpses. This means that they left taking the bodies of their comrades, or they continued to explore the floor. Although it is unlikely, he heard the sound of a siren and thought that this was a trap siren calling monsters. It seems to be coming from a neighboring tomb. He turned the corner and asked, "This way?" He thought they had been blown up by a bomb and then decided to go deeper anyway by activating the siren. Idiots. Even with a veteran in the group, they screwed up so badly. He hid behind a wall and peeked out a little and saw the monsters dealing with the adventurers. He tried to count them. 1, 2, 5. Were there 5? Garbage stood on top of the corpses, holding a sword in one hand and a chain in the other. He gritted his teeth and looked ahead. MC thought in surprise, "A chain?" Apparently they were the type to take advantage of newbies by taking their belongings. These creatures use them as a human shield. Nothing new though. He swung his sword, grazing the monster's nose. The second monster laughed at this. Then the main monster picked up a large club and walked towards Garbage. Their arms crossed and Garbage swung to strike. At that moment, the protagonist cast a spell, "Let the flames ignite." Fire appeared on the tip of his finger and he directed it at the base of Garbage's chain, thus destroying it. The chain fell. The monster grunted in surprise. Garbage turned and looked at MC. He told him not to hold back. Garbage then swung his sword and attacked the monster in front of him. Then he jumped on another, moving forward. He attacked the monsters in his path. The next moment, the monster ran at the protagonist. He managed to dodge to the side, and the monster ran further down the corridor. Garbage pointed his finger at him and was indignant. The protagonist raised his hands and explained that he would not get anything from his death. Then he began to put the corpses in a bag and thought, "I wonder if anyone would want to resurrect them?" He said, "Garbage. If he wants to resurrect them, he will have to pay the Templars." Garbage was very surprised, and they, taking several corpses with them, headed for the exit. After a while, they were having lunch in the dining room. Sesmar came there too. Taking off his helmet, he asked, "Is this Garbage?" "And he is Mifune here." Yarmut, sighing, told him not to call him that. Sesmar said, "Right, he forgot that he did not like this nickname and apologized. Do you mind if he dines with them?" He replied, "If he is not afraid to sit next to the corpses, he can sit." He replied with a smile, "What is there to be afraid of? They are already dead. Bring him some ale and meat, and a roast boar's leg and potatoes." He asked, "Where are the others?" Sesmar replied, "They are on their own now, doing whatever they want." He was more worried about something else. "Is he in a group with Garbage now?" He replied that he seemed to have joined him, looked at him with hungry eyes, so he decided to feed him. The protagonist threw down a piece of food and asked, "Garbage?" Sesmar replied, "What?" He didn't know. "A rude name, huh?" He replied, "Anyway, better than nothing." Sesmar, biting off a piece of meat, said that there was a story behind the name. From what he heard, someone attacked a wagon with slaves. They ate everyone who was there. He had to just imagine a damn massacre. But they didn't even touch him. They were probably disgusted, hence Garbage. Anyway, he's just a slave who doesn't even talk and acts like a dog. Yarmut continued, "Whoever found him used him as a human shield, but he survived. Didn't he?" "They tried the same thing today." He asked, "What happened?" Then he said thoughtfully, I see. He thought he bought him. Yarmut added, he's not so rotten as to buy and sell people. He asked, so he just saved him? Yarmut answered, he's not a Samaritan. Sesmar asked, gray morality? He answered, exactly. Sesmar said that maintaining such a balance is quite difficult. Is this his philosophy or something like that? The protagonist answered, when it comes to deadly techniques, they say that a certain amount of malice is never a bad thing. But no, he didn't think about it too deeply. Sesmar told him to be careful, man. Yarmut asked, about? He answered, the guy's squad may have died, but the clan is still alive. He specified, the clan? Yes, he himself follows him around like a tail. What does it have to do with him? Sesmar looked at Garbage and said that he didn't seem to care either. He answered, fairly. Sesmar took a piece of meat in his hand and asked with a smile, did he want to spend the night with these corpses? He replied with a smile, why be afraid? They are already dead. Sesmar said thoughtfully. Now, having looked at him closer, it seemed to him that he had seen this face somewhere. Later they went to sleep, Garbage on the floor, and Yarmouth grabbed him by the scruff of the neck and throwing him on the bed, said that if he was going to sleep, he should sleep there. This was his place. Garbage barked indignantly, and he answered that he should not irritate him and go to bed. He was more comfortable on the floor. It was like sleeping in a stable. Sleeping in a bed made him feel old. If one day he wanted to take a nap in a bed, then it was time to tie up with adventurism. The hard cold floor, the corpses instead of pillows and their pungent smell, all this is a part of him. He is sure that these habits are from his past life. In the morning, they continued their journey. On the way, they saw a large pit, threw bags with corpses into it. MC said, well, maybe he will be able to get more corpses, and jumped into the pit. Garbage jumped after him, and he said that it was not bad, but he did not have to participate in it. They stood near a large gate, and Garbage crouched. Yarmut said as he wanted, and they began to wait. Later, an angry group of adventurers jumped into this pit. Yarmut said they were gone for a long time. He thought it was a group of adventurers. One of them said that he should give them the boy. He is theirs. The protagonist put his hand to his side and asked, is it true? He does not see a chain on him. One of the adventurers took out a sword and shouted, stop talking. Yarmut answered, as he says, but don't let him regret it later. Garbage ran to attack and swung his sword in front of himself. The adventurer jumped to the side, covering himself with his shield, and at that time the protagonist defended himself from another adventurer. The main adventurer shouted that they need to be surrounded. There are only 2 of them. The protagonist, looking around, noticed that there were 6 of them. He heard a scream and a blade flew past his body. Garbage jumped back and turned in the air, landing behind. Looking around, he saw 3 there and the same number here. The main adventurer shouted that they should not let him cast a spell. Another answered that he knew. The third shouted, what are they messing around there? MC got it. 2 fighters, thieves, and not a single spellcaster. The adventurers ran up to the main character, started attacking him and wishing him death. He jumped back and said, okay. The main adventurer shouted that he won't say a word, a mage. MC replied that he would drink from his skull. Then he pulled out his sword from its sheath, and the adventurer didn't even have time to be surprised when his head separated from his body. Then he held the sword out in front of him and said, who said he was a mage? The villains were surprised. What, a blade? He replied, a katana, to be more precise. Garbage jumped and swung his sword in midair. One of the adventurers said, quick. The next second, he cut off his head. He cleared a path for himself, swung his sword in a circle, and killed the adventurers in his path. Pleased with himself, he smiled and swung his sword. MC looked at the rest and noticed that there were 2 left. The adventurer ran towards the protagonist, screaming and waving his sword. He dodged and then delivered his crushing blow, cutting off both of the adventurer's hands. The protagonist said that he hoped that he knew a priest who would lend a helping hand. They shouldn't have come here. They better not be so upset. Everything will heal, right? He swung his sword and hit the adventurer right in the throat. He was the last one left. The adventurer got scared and ran away with all his might, trying to climb up the stairs. The protagonist thought, at least someone cares about their lives. Garbage wanted to rush forward, but the protagonist stopped him and told him to be quiet. If they killed everyone, no one would pay them for resurrection. They would meet this kid again, and it didn't matter where he would be. After all, he was an adventurer too. Meanwhile, the escaped adventurer was slamming his hands on the floor and said with tears in his eyes, damn. The protagonist thought, because that's their life. The protagonist started counting the corpses. It came out to 10. He asked, are you hungry again? Not long before, the man kicked Raraj with his foot and he fell down the stairs onto the floor. Ria asked, did he screw up again? What this time? Did he open the poison trap? He replied that they said that there was little loot as it is. She replied, a lie. How much can this take? They also need to live on something. She handed him the package and said, okay, here, he should take this. He asked, is she sure? Ria confirmed it. Who knows what they will do to her if she gains weight. And she can't leave any leftovers, otherwise they will cut her portion. He said he understood. She added that he should not forget her kindness. She plans to earn some money, leave the clan, and return to her parent. And he, Raraja, will go with her. He added, dreams. Why would she need this? She answered briefly. She wanted to. Besides, she was helping him with his dream of becoming an adventurer. He was surprised by what was said. He was lying on the floor and thought that he had survived. Then he walked in the rain down the street and thought, in their eyes, his life does not even deserve death. Meanwhile, Annika held Garbage's hands and tried to wash them. She understood that adventurers were used to dirt, but they also needed to wash sometimes. Garbage tried to get out of the basin, tore himself away from Annik's hands. She said that every day could be her last, so she should take a bath while she can. Then she turned to the protagonist and asked why there was so much dried blood on her body. He replied that he often went somewhere and then came back like this. She continued that if he was looking after her, he should do it properly. He replied that he wasn't looking after anyone, he was just hanging around. She washed Garbage's hair and yelled at her to be still. The protagonist said in surprise, "Garbage is a girl?" Annika exploded. "Oh my god, he's hopeless." Later, they were all sitting next to each other. Annika was wiping Garbage's hair and said, "She looks happy. Live well and die well." MC thoughtfully said, "Is that how it works?" Seeing Garbage bolt upright, Annika yelled, "Oh my god!" She ran to the end of the room and grabbed her sword. Annika asked, "Did he say his next raid would be longer?" He confirmed it. He'll be gone for a few days. Time passes unnoticed in the dungeon, so he uses his own method to determine how much supplies he uses per day. Annika asked if he was going alone again. MC replied that he would take Sesmar if he was free. She was surprised. Did he have any friends at all? He told her to leave him alone. A corpse was carried past them. Annika said that sometimes you just need to be able to give up. Even if he found the corpse of someone who knew him, it was not a fact that this would solve his problem. He asked if she was worried. Something new. She replied that she was a priestess after all. If he knew how long it took to resurrect him, his hair would have turned gray. He was lucky, but who knows, sooner or later, bad luck will catch up with him. He was lucky, but who knows if he will be lucky in the future. Sooner or later, bad luck will catch up with him, and what will he do in that case? MC replied that in that case, someone else will take his place. Garbage saw how the main character wanted to leave and ran after him. Annika followed him by saying that she wished him a good life and a good death. Then they headed for the exit. Annika thoughtfully put her finger to her cheek and said that she had seen this girl's face somewhere before. Despite his sullenness, this cracker took food for two. Meanwhile, in the establishment, Raraja was having dinner on a piece of bread. He bit off and shouted, "To hell with everyone." Memories surfaced in his head. All his comrades were dead. The clan forced him to unite with these useless bastards. Should he revive them? What should he do? But how? Could he do it alone? How could a thief make money alone? He wouldn't be able to kill monsters, which meant no treasure. Besides, all the stolen money was almost gone, but the worst thing was that he was damn hungry. He took a piece of bread from the plate and, clenching his teeth, bit off a piece. He heard a voice from behind asking him to spare a minute. Maraja, surprised, looked at him. The magician continued, "Apparently he is not having an easy time now. If he does not mind, then he could help him." Raja thought, "Magician? He is creepy." The magician sat down next to him and continued, "In his youth he also experienced difficulties, so he cannot watch him suffer here. There is no need to worry besides." With these words, he put a plate of food in front of him and added he should accept this as a sign of his goodwill. His body is his treasure, he should treat himself. He answered, "Okay," and began to eat. Everything was very tasty. This rabbit just melts in your mouth, divinely delicious. The magician continued, "To tell the truth, he has a request, or rather work." Raraja was so carried away by the food that he did not even understand that they were talking to him and was surprised that he was talking to him. Money? Easy work? Then he will be able to resurrect his comrades, even despite his strangeness. He is still ready for anything. Raraja continued eating and thought how delicious. The mage took the stone in his hands, brought it to him and said that he would need to use this stone. He looked at the mage's neck and thought a strange amulet, a piece of something. Meanwhile, MC put his fingers to the bridge of his nose and asked why she always pounced on monsters as soon as she saw them. Garbage once again rushed and cut the monster with her sword, seized the treasure chest from him. MC approached her and told her to listen. Their task was to advance as deep as possible. She looked at him in surprise. He told her to forget about monsters and treasures. Did she understand? She turned and pointed at the door. He said that he hoped that this was consent. Garbage kicked the door open and walked on. The protagonist thought, although her method was also not bad. Suddenly she crouched, holding the sword. MC approached her and asked, "Were you hurt? Poison? Paralysis? Petrification? Hunger? Fatigue?" She cried loudly. He said okay, he understood. Then he suggested setting up camp. Garbage was happy, and he took out vessels of water and placed them near them. She took one vessel in her hands and began to examine it with interest, then opened it, sniffed it, and turned away. MC took the vessel in his hands and said, "It's just water, it shouldn't smell." Holy water is necessary for adventurers. With this you can create a barrier, but first you need to check the inner zone of the barrier for traps. These are all necessary precautions before setting up camp. He began to pour holy water around. The lid of the vessel fell on the floor and the smell began to come out. Garbage grabbed a stick, imagining it as meat, and ran. She sat on the floor bent over and held something in her hands. Suddenly Raraja ran into the room and he was holding a stone in his hand. The protagonist only managed to shout, "Fool! This stone!" Suddenly he threw a stone with all his might, which hit the floor, causing an explosion. After some time, Raraja woke up, looked around, and asked where he was, and the protagonist told him to say thank you that they are not in the stone. He turned around, jumped back in fear, and seeing a figure in the distance, he shouted, "Yarmouth!" Then Garbage pounced on him. He jumped back from her. Raraja grabbed his head with his hands and thought that he was finished. MC noted that coming to the dungeon alone, being a thief, is quite brave. Where did he get the demonic stone? Raraja asked again in fear. A stone. He explained that he was in the tavern, eating. Then some strange man approached him. It seems he was a magician. He also had an amulet on his neck, a strange one, like a shard of something. MC smiled and bent down to pick up the stone from the floor, and asked what his name was. He answered, Raraja. He said, "I see," and holding the amulet in his hand, he whispered. The darkness parted and showed him the way. Then a strong wind appeared around them. Everything spun. Raraja thought, a spell? Right, he is a mage who is good with a sword. The protagonist looked at the map and said, "They are on the same floor, but they were thrown far away." Then he threw the amulet into the corridor. They began to return and Raraja shouted, "What about him?" The protagonist asked, "He will not go with them? Didn't expect this from an adventurer?" Raraja followed them and thought, "I see, he has an ace up his sleeve, or rather a coin, which he uses to check traps." Logical, but he ignores chests, which means he does not know how to deactivate traps. Garbage stood behind him and began to urge him on. He turned to her and asked, "She wants him to go faster?" Raraja asked, "That thing, what is it, a demonic stone?" MC said that when it splits, it turns everyone around it into ashes. Raraja asked again, "What?" He continued, "But if you use it correctly, it teleports." It was either incomplete or he used it correctly. Raraja answered that he was leaning towards the first option. That man apparently had a grudge against him. He answered, "Perhaps." Raraja thought, "Perhaps? Why is he acting like he doesn't care?" They tried to kill him, the fool. And this one doesn't care about anything. They walked on and he asked, "Is he not going to kill him?" MC answered that in the dungeon, groups often unite to survive. Raraja answered that he knows this, but usually it all depends on what a person is inclined to, whether he is law-abiding or not, good or evil, for example, whether he will help others for free. If not, and he demands something in return, then this man is evil, just like the people from his clan, and he is no better, because he was their errand boy. Raraja continued that looking at his craft, it seemed to him that he is the same as them. The protagonist replied that he tries to remain neutral and continued that he does not know about her. Raraja thought that without an affiliation, the other members of the squad will not understand how to communicate with her, although, at the moment, it does not matter. The protagonist added, "Besides, he is not his enemy." Raraja thought, what is he thinking? If he dies, there will be no one left who can pay for their revival. Then Garbage began to urge him again. He shouted, "Okay." He understood, no need to grumble. If they get out, maybe that man will pay him or his clan will decide to hang him. He does not even know what is better. But as long as his heart beats, he will seize every opportunity. After some time, they stopped at the door. MC said that this place is unfamiliar to him, but he hopes that this will help them find a way back. Raraja asked, "Will they go inside?" The protagonist answered, "Even if they find another way, it may not be easier." Raraja hoped that there will be a corridor ahead, and not a tomb. If the latter, then monsters hungry for flesh will be waiting for them, and in that case they will all be screwed. He took out his sword and asked, "So what?" MC also took out his sword from its sheath and answered, "Okay." But Garbage got ahead of everyone, swung her sword, and with a piercing scream cut the door in half with her sword. They entered, looked back, and saw a dragon. Raraja said, "Is that a dragon?" MC replied that it is not. It is a fire-breathing dragon. He shouted, "Damn! Looks like they will have to fight him." He replied, "Well, they are close." Raraja was surprised. How can he smile in such a situation? He does not understand him. Garbage was ready to attack, and he said that at the moment he was in solidarity with her. She raised her hand to attack, but Raraja grabbed her and stopped her, throwing her to the ground near him. He turned around and shouted in surprise, "A huge dragonfly?" He turned and saw that there were many of them. MC swung his sword and said, they use their breath as a weapon. A fighter might be able to handle it, but a thief doesn't stand a chance. He thanked him. This information was very helpful to him. Raja thought, at a time like this, his clanmates would use him as a human shield. He didn't know a more affectionate person, and neither did Garbage. Then he turned around and thought, what should he do? MC suggested he parry. He said he understood and started swinging his sword. The protagonist suggested finishing them off. Garbage pushed off the ground and ran to attack. Jumping up, she swung her sword, preparing to attack the dragon. Raja watched. Drawing her sword, Garbage slashed at the dragon's head. While the dragon opened its mouth and roared, she struck from different sides. Then she jumped off the dragon's head and landed, flipping over. Raja thought that Garbage had talent, maybe even a genius. The difference between them was obvious. God probably sent her more blessings than him. He shouted, this is bad. Level, equipment, experience, they have none of this to compete with a dragon. The dragon raised its head and saw Garbage in front of it. At that moment, a dragonfly flew at Raja, and he began to swing his sword around himself, not letting it fly up to him, but the dragonfly began to attack faster. He shouted that it hurt. He remembered the protagonist's words about using their breath as a weapon, and he knew from childhood that dragons are capable of spewing fire, and always dreamed of seeing one in real life. But a dragonfly. Raja grinned and holding the sword in front of him said, be careful what you wish for. Then he attacked the dragonfly again. It flew back and exploded. The smoke hit Raja. He dodged back and shouted, that was close. Then he fell back, dodging the attacks. He looked up and shouted, so many of them are here. Garbage, jumping, swinging her sword, attacked the dragonflies, landed on the ground behind Raja. The two of them began to attack the dragonflies. Raja thanked her. Then the dragon began to release fire, and Raja thought, so this is what a real dragon's fiery breath is like. The smell of sulfur and burning flesh, hellish heat, incinerating everything in its path. Does Yarmouth really want to fight this monster? The dragon opened its mouth. The protagonist thought, a battle with a dragon. Then it released fire. MC dodged. The others looked at it in surprise. He stood up and asked what to do with it. The dragon landed, swung its huge paw, and hit the asphalt. The protagonist jumped back and thought that he needed to act quickly. He decided to use magic. Halito would be useless to him. Malachito was also not an option. La Halito might work, but it was risky. Another option was to use Korta or Bakorta to defend himself, but again, it was not worth delaying. MC said out loud that he would have to do it the old-fashioned way. The dragon was flying at him. He ran closer, jumped up and swung his sword in the air. The dragon turned away. Raja shouted, what is he doing? He won't be able to dodge. The dragon will incinerate him. MC replied that he will see. MC concentrated powerful energy in his fist, squeezed it, and the power sparked. He used the fist ability, released powerful energy, hitting the dragon. Then the dragon's body began to smoke and it fell lifelessly to the ground. Raja asked, is that all? He replied that it is not. Garbage saw the chest and ran to it. He told her not to touch it. Raja said she was like a dog. The protagonist said, well, it's his turn now. He asked in surprise, what did he want him to open it? The MC said, what's wrong? There's a thief in their party? Why don't they open the chest? Raja said, what if he can't? He said that they would die here then. Well, if there's poison or then only he would suffer. And if there's an explosive trap, then he would most likely survive. And if anything happens, he could resurrect them. Raja thought, yes, he knows. If at least one member of the party is alive, he can take the corpses to the temple and they will be resurrected. However, this idea is not so easy to accept. Although he apparently doesn't care about it, he feels like a fish in water in the dungeon. No, seriously, where did this man come from? Raja said that he will try, but he does not promise anything. MC replied that he shouldn't worry. They wouldn't understand the value of the items until they took it in for evaluation. Raja continued that he wasn't talking about that at all. He sat down next to the chest and said that he would take a look. The others watched him. He swung his sword and shouted, come on. He stuck the sword into the chest and thought, everything is fine here. Here too. No, empty. The protagonist noticed. It seems he knows his stuff. Did someone teach him this? He replied. Was that sarcasm? MC said, just an observation. For his level, he's not bad. Raja thought, a thief is more of a forced class. Where does he go if he doesn't have the height and build? After all, you can send a newbie, but in his clan they used shields that were caught on the street. No one asked him to work with traps to disarm it. They died one after another and he could do nothing about it. Just watch their flesh burn, watch the poison slowly kill them. Their faces, their smell, their screams are forever imprinted in his memory. But one day they sent a girl, Rhea. She told him that she joined the clan to earn money for her parents, and they became friends. He remembers how she always sang something, even if the day was bad. He liked her voice. One day she opened another chest and the trap threw her off. She died. One of the thieves said, useless fool. Later he said, okay, there are no traps in the lid, not in the box, time to check the keyhole. Garbage began to sniff the chest. Raraja said, "By the way, they do not move away from the chest, although the chance that there is still gunpowder in it is quite high. So this is what it is like to be in a group." He thought, although it is difficult to even call it a group, they ended up together by pure chance and continued to open the chest. Memories came flooding back to him again. Ria appeared, who asked what he was dreaming about. Raraja said, "Hey," the protagonist asked, "right?" He continued that he would laugh if he told him that the world is flat and the edge the world abruptly ends, and that he wants to get there and cross it. The protagonist answered, "Everyone has their own goals. Someone wants power and money. Someone keeps the rich, cursed swords, or something else. All this is unimportant. The only important thing is whether he goes to this goal or not." Raja continued to open the lock and said, "And if on the way to this goal you have to help scumbags, what then?" He did not think about it. The protagonist said that his hands were filled with his adventure. MC said yes, but he wouldn't believe him if he told him. He said, "Oh well." Before he could finish speaking, the lock opened. Everyone was happy about that. Garbage sat down next to the chest, opened the chest and beamed at what she saw. Raja clenched his fist and said, "Well, that's it." MC said he did a great job. Raja agreed, and later, they found a way out of the dungeon. When they came out, Raja fell to the ground and said that they had finally crawled out. Garbage fell next to him, and the protagonist stood nearby, looking into the distance and holding a large bag of treasure in his hands. Raja imagined how he could quickly get back to the tavern and go to bed for 5 days. "Oh, this straw is soft as a cloud." Then the protagonist said that they shouldn't relax. They still need to take the treasure for appraisal. They were surprised. "For an assessment? Won't the merchant do it for them?" Protagonist replied, "If they take the loot directly to him, then he will fleece them blind." Maharaja said, "Oh shit." And he thought, even though sleeping in the stalls is free, he still needs something to eat. And he said, "Okay, we will drag." Suddenly, a familiar voice was heard from behind. He said, "Hey," he sees someone got lucky with the raid. Wow, instead of the usual corpses, he has a couple of living kids with him. They turned to see Sesmar, Sarah, and the others. The protagonist said, "Lucky? Maybe. And are they still walking around with Hawkwind's corpse?" Sarah said, "Not quite. They resurrected him, but he died again." Bill said, "He opened the box, thought it was poison needles, but it turned out to be an explosive trap." Prospero added, "Hawkwind always comes up with something." Raja thought, "Hawkwind? Every respectable thief knows that name. Is that really it?" Moradin said, "Yes, he asked them to train him, but it turned out the way it did. He was even a little ashamed." Raja was surprised. "Star Squad? Sesmar's group?" He said in Garbage's ear, "Does she know them?" Garbage replied that he had found someone to ask. Sarah said, "Yarmut, she had heard from Anya that he had gathered a group. Are these children his comrades?" Anya had spoken of a girl, but he also had a boy. The protagonist looked at Sesmar with a pleading look, but he replied that he could not help him here, so that he would not look at him like that. The protagonist said that the drinks were on him. Sesmar exclaimed, "That's different," and invited everyone to have a drink. Raja was sitting near the bag of treasure and accidentally overheard the conversation. Sesmar, "But seriously, why does he need them?" The protagonist thought about it and answered, "They have potential. A little experience, and they will be good." Sesmar said, "I see." Then he approached them, tapped Raja on the shoulder and noticed, "Well done, guys. You rarely get praise from this cracker." Then he stroked Garbage's hair. She was unhappy. Protagonist asked what he was talking about. Sesmar replied that he would tell after the drinking. He grabbed Raj by the hand and shouted, "What are we standing there for?" Then he told them to go. Alcohol, he won't get drunk himself. He told them to wait. Raja turned and saw him walking away from them quickly and wondered what was going on. Why were they being so kind? He shouted, "Yarmouth, Garbage." He smiled and said, "Better remember, his name is Raja," and he and the others began to go further and further. Then they all had fun and drank in the tavern. In the end, all the loot they found was assessed as normal for this dungeon. If they had gone to other lands, they could have lived for decades like kings, but he never thought of leaving the city. After some time, Raja lay on the hay and thought that he just liked being an adventurer. Raja and company safely returned to the temple. Later, he stood with bags and said that they had 3 today for her to do her tricks. Sister Annika smiled and said that she saw that he was already used to it. He replied that of course he is used to it. They were constantly going down into the dungeon with him, and besides, he needed money. Annika continued, "Well, in that case, she would like to ask him to help her remove equipment from the corpses. They don't need it anyway. Not for free, of course." He replied, "Is she serious? He's going to strip them all naked now." He walked closer to the dead man, covered his face with his hand, and told her to repeat again how he was supposed to remove the gear from these dead men. He wondered what the hell killed this guy. He started to remove the gear and said, "Did he really have to do this to all the dead men?" Garbage came to help when he was trying to get the gear out and thought, "This thing is stuck to the flesh." The protagonist said that she looked pleased. Annika asked, "Is it true?" He noticed that she had a happy face. She said she just didn't think he would ever have party members. Garbage shouted, "Party members?" The protagonist raised his hand to his face and said thoughtfully that he never thought about it. Annika said, "Of course. That's why you always need an outside perspective." He asked, "What?" She said that she was going with him. The protagonist said then he would need to grab a few things. Annika raised her hand and added that he was going shopping. Was she right? Then, she called the guys there. Garbage ran to her and she took her by the shoulders, stroked her hair. Raja said sadly that he was tired. He took off all the equipment and laid it out. One pile for sale, another for the trash. Annika asked, "Was it a bad training session?" He thought, apparently, this is one of the ways for the temple to earn money. Annika said that she doubted that they could handle it alone. So be it, she would go with them. They went into the store. It was very noisy there. Garbage even covered her ears with her hands. They were shouting everywhere that they were buying their junk and adventurers without a markup. They were offering Western wine and Northern honey. Light the future with a torch. Save your skin in the darkness of the dungeon. Selling a course from the goddess herself. Sister Annika was very pleased with this expedition. Raja reasoned that Annika looked quite calm among all these screams, and in general, what were they forgetting at the flea market? He asked, "Will she really pay them?" She answered, "Of course, she promised." He continued, "So what will she buy them? Swords?" Annika said that this is up to Yarmouth, and she is just a consultant here. The protagonist said that they need to buy normal equipment. He thought about it and said, "A sword. If only he had a sword," and began to imagine how he fought with a new sword. He imagined Garbage instead of him, fighting with a new sword. He caught himself thinking, why did he imagine Garbage when he thought about a sword? Garbage wanted to ask something, but he cut her off. But no, nothing. Garbage walked on with a sad look. Annika raised her hand to her cheek and said, "Oh my God." Then Garbage smelled food and wanted to run. Raja said, "Horror. Nothing could spoil her appetite. They had just worked with the dead." The protagonist stopped her, putting his hand on her head, and said that they would eat later. Raja thought that he did not understand them. She obeyed him, even if she did not like it, although he himself was not far behind. These small errands were nothing compared to what he was forced to do in the clan. And besides, they were going to buy him equipment. There was no reason to complain. Then they approached the shop. Raja asked, "Did they come?" The protagonist did not answer, and he asked, "Is something wrong?" He looked at the sign and answered, "No, everything was fine. It was just that this place seemed familiar to him." Katlob's trading post. Maybe he used to come here often? Annika said that the more signs he found, the better. And maybe then he would remember his past and forget about the dungeon. He said that was unlikely. They went into the shop. She said, "What a stubborn one." Raja asked what she meant by the past. She looked thoughtfully out the window. She remembered Yarmouth as dead, and said that he did not remember anything that happened to him before his resurrection. She knows how hard it is to believe, but she heard that this can happen if his energy is absorbed by a succubus. Raja asked in surprise, "A succubus? It is difficult to imagine him with a woman." She answered that it is true, and he does not seem like a fool who would succumb to their charms. Besides, their filth prevents resurrection. Then she added, "Well, they must go, but she hopes that they can find him suitable equipment." They went into the shop and Annika picked up the sword and said, smiling, "Let him look here. Isn't the sword beautiful?" The protagonist answered that it is not bad, just right for Garbage. She added, "It glows." Raja was surprised. Is this a magic blade? Where did such wonders come from in this hole? They continued to examine the equipment. Raja came closer and thought, of course, even if in this place there will definitely not be the legendary lord's garb, but there will probably be an elven chainmail. The protagonist looked at the display case and said that they could use an anti-magic blade. Annika added that she wouldn't mind a kitchen knife either. Suddenly Katlob came out from behind the counter and asked who was there. They were surprised. He continued that he could smell the North Sea, locked in cold ice, Sister Annika. She replied that she was glad to meet him. Katlob continued, and also the smell of old ashes. Yarmouth, he didn't think he was still alive. The protagonist replied that as he saw it, death was in no hurry. And when he came here, did he feel that he was not welcome here? Well, that was true, Raja thought, so this was Katlob. The elf forges blades and armor. It was more common to see a dwarf behind the anvil. Katlob sniffed and asked what he smelled. But these were diamonds among the black coal. Katlob asked, "Are they new?" Garbage barked and Raja confirmed it. Annika and the protagonist stood behind them, watching. Raja wanted to explain that they had come to sell all sorts of things, for the temple of course. Katlob picked up the sword. Raja was surprised. Can he not see? Katlob said that a lot was damaged. He replied that it was not his fault. They were glued tightly. He continued that he had bent the armor. Raja said with displeasure, how else would he have managed to remove it? Katlob suggested that he grind up the corpse. Raja was scared. Katlob extended his hand. Raja asked, "What?" Katlob said that he was a thief and to show his tools. Raja took everything out and laid it out on the table. Katlub looked and said that it was all nonsense. Raja got angry and shouted at him to shut up. That was all he had, that he was bothering him. Katlub asked, "Did he do it himself?" Raja replied, "Yes, what's the problem?" Of course, he did it himself. But what else could he do? He had to somehow get out of it. Katlub said that when he had time to look again, he would give him better tools, and handed it to him this. He thought that everything would be useful in the dungeon, so Raja thanked him. Katlub said that he would write it off to the temple account. Annika replied, "Okay, so be it." The protagonist said that he was free to dispose of his funds as he pleased. Raja irritably said that he agreed, and continued that she was lucky the sword was bought. Katlub asked in surprise, "What? He also wants the blade? He's a thief, why would he need it?" Raja replied, "Indeed, let the monsters eat him." Katlub continued, his job was to open chests. Why would he want to fight? The protagonist approached Raja and said, "The kid was always asking for trouble." Katlub said he should gather a full party. The protagonist replied, "Let him choose what he wanted. He would pay." Raja asked, "Are you sure?" He continued, "If anything happens, Annika will put it on his account." Annika approached Garbage, took her by the shoulders and said, "Well, then she will pick something for their princess." She would take off her collar, but she is afraid that then she will be hunted. Then she took her by the back and told her to go with her, and they went to look at the armor and a suitable sword. Raja was also looking at the display case and said what he should choose. "All the swords look amazing, my eyes run wide, his knife is a toothpick compared to this." He asked, "Were all of these found in the dungeon?" He answered, "Partly. Some were created but some were found." Raja was surprised and looked at him. He continued, "He prefers to call such items legendary." Raja went to the counter, took a knife and called Yarmut. The protagonist said that he was listening. He asked, would he also like such a weapon? The protagonist said that he thought that he died searching for such a weapon, but the world did not revolve around it. Raja asked, what is he talking about? The protagonist answered, if he has it, he does not mind, but if not, then he will come up with something without it. Raja thought, his weapon doesn't look legendary. In that case, can he reach his level by wielding a normal knife? Then Katlub said, that's why he doesn't like him. At that time, a magician was walking towards the shop. He opened the door and entered. Raja looked at him in surprise and thought, this is that scary guy. Or is he not? Suddenly, the magician crouched down, took his swords out of their sheaths, and waving in a jump, pounced on Raja. He thought that his body could not keep up with his thoughts. No, that's not it. His thoughts could not keep up with his body. The magician was waving his swords. It flew right in front of Raja, but he managed to dodge. He thought, did he dodge? Although it was expected, the thick stench of death in the dungeon transforms the adventurer's body without his knowledge, not the physical structure itself, but the spirit and perception. The human body feels and reacts sensitively to the approach of death, even if his mind is not aware of it. Then he fell to the floor. The magician swung to attack him. He struck with his sword. Garbage, noticing this, pushed off the ground and jumping up, attacked the magician, but he managed to put his swords behind him, parrying the attack. Looking back, he saw that his swords broke and Garbage fell to the floor. Raja got up and saw that he spat out needles. Several needles hit Garbage in the face. Raja put his hand to his face and thought, what the hell? Muscles, nerves, eyes, everything is reacting too fast. He does not even have time to think. Garbage screamed in pain, and the magician reached for the counter for the sword. Katlub told him not to touch it, and he, despite the warning, drew the sword from its sheath and got into a fighting stance. But the next second his eyes rolled back. Raja, perplexed, exclaimed, no way, this sword is cursed. Seriously? He turned to Garbage and shouted at them to do something. The protagonist asked, a dull sword? What is it? Katlub replied, a double-edged sword. And it's not for sale, a collector's item, a wonderful blade, isn't it? It's a creation of lost ancient magic in blacksmithing. The fact that it's cursed is just a trifle. The protagonist said, a double-edged sword, so the name is just as stupid. Raja thought, why the hell aren't they helping? And said, they're going to. At that moment, the mage with an enraged face jumped up and pounced on Raja. He shot fire sparks at him. Raja jumped back, tripped over Garbage lying on the floor, turned around, and started shooting fireballs. The mage deflected the balls with his sword and also began shooting fireballs. Raja swung his knife, trying to deflect the attacks. The protagonist watched everything that was happening. Raja thought in surprise, unbelievable. Trash like him can fight the owner of a cursed sword. His hands are busy parrying the attacks, but maybe there is a chance that he can defeat him. Nightmare, he is finished. The mage swung his sword. Raja crouched and was about to parry the attack, when suddenly Annika flew into the room, swinging her sword. She swung and hit the mage with all her might, but he remained standing. Raja thought sadly, did she miss? But then he saw how the mage's head separated from his neck, and blood began to spurt out. He was surprised. Blood splashed onto Annika. She stood there and said a prayer, asking the Lord to protect the soul of this sinner she had killed. Then she turned to the protagonist, pointed her sword at him and shouted, "Yarmouth!" Why was he standing there like a pillar when the children needed help? The protagonist stopped the sword with his finger and said that he believed that he could cope without his help. Apparently, simply gaining experience in the dungeon is not enough to improve skills. You will have to take breaks and rest in the city. Then he approached Raraj, put his hand on his shoulder and said that he was the same, probably. Everyone went down to garbage, and the protagonist told her not to move. He was going to pull it out, and he began to pull the needles out of her face. When all the needles were pulled out, she was happy, and she and Raraja looked at each other. She picked up a sword and said, "God." They came up to her, and she said that she was asking for forgiveness, but could she buy a sword? Everyone stood in the room and looked at the headless corpse. Katlob said that they should not leave the headless corpse lying in the middle of the shop. They had to clean up. Annika said that then she would take responsibility and take the corpse to the temple. And Yarmouth need to do some shopping. That a bloody nun was carrying a corpse, a sight as if from a joke. In the end, he had to go. The dungeon transforms the body, the corpse is heavy, and the equipment too. But he never wavered. He was not even tired. So this is what the power that the dungeon gives. In any case, it is better to carry the dead than to be a living shield. He carried the corpse in a bag and thought that he was sorry that he did not manage to survive. Later he returned, sighed, and said that he was tired. Annika said that she apologized for this. Raraja said that he told the other priests that Yarmouth killed the robber, for he could not admit that it was the nun's doing. It was the first time he had the honor of lying so brazenly to the priests. Annika continued that she was really very sorry. He replied that it was nothing, he was used to being an errand boy. She clapped her hands and said that she would thank them and treat them to a meal at the tavern that evening. Good idea. Garbage turned and looked at her and was surprised. Raraja asked, "Seriously?" She said, "Couldn't be more serious." The protagonist said, "A tavern." He wouldn't put much hope in it. Annika said, "A tavern isn't just a place to meet people." They walked forward. Annika closed her eyes, folded her arms, raised them up, and screamed, "Tavern! It's a place where you can eat, drink, and just enjoy life." Raja pointed his finger at the protagonist and said, "As far as he knows, this is revenge for him watching him get killed. He only eats barley porridge." Annika put her hand to her mouth and said in surprise, "Oh my god." They came to the tavern, the largest tavern for adventurers in scale, Durga's tavern. They came inside. Garbage and Raraja were very surprised by what they saw around. There were a lot of people and very noisy. Then, Annika said that it was time to eat their fill. They should not be shy. Adventurers need to eat. Raraja sat down at the table and said that he could finally sit down. Strange, he was not tired at all when he carried a heavy load. And now, MC said in response, apparently he was mentally tired. Sometimes this kind of exhaustion weighs more heavily than physical. He answered that it was true. Annika asked Garbage, "Will she have meat?" She happily began to shake her hands. Raraja said, "And where did she get so much energy?" MC asked him, "Will he have meat?" He answered that he would. He called the waiter and dictated the order: black bread, dried fish, and also pearl barley porridge. Annika said that she did not need the porridge and dictated a new order. Then she said she was asking Raraja to keep an eye on Garbage. He said, "Okay, so what?" She went on to say she needed to talk to Yarmouth. The protagonist said, "More moralizing." She responded, "Exactly," grabbed his hand and dragged him. Raraja crossed his arms on the table and said goodbye to him. "Yarmouth, rest in peace, although it's not so bad to die if it's Sister Annika." Then the waiter brought the meat and apologized for the wait. Raja looked and thought, meat? He doesn't seem to have an appetite. Meanwhile, Garbage greedily attacked the food. He doesn't understand how she can eat at a time like this. Not only that, he worked with corpses and then got all the bad stuff beat out of him, and not even that his head was almost chopped off. He had never tried to kill a person before, and this was the first time. Killing monsters is not the same as killing people. When he attacked Yarmouth, he had no desire to kill him. She, on the other hand, is ready to pounce on anyone without hesitation. I wonder what made her like this. He threw these thoughts aside, picked up a fork and knife, and said, "Okay." Suddenly, someone hit him on the head and shouted, "Hey, kid!" He's still alive. He fell face first into the plate, but at the same moment he got up and turned around, wanted to hit, and shouted, "What the hell? Who is he?" Sesmar smiled and apologized. Then he said, "Since they met, we should have a drink." And they all sat down at the big table. Sarah said, "He always does that. You have to be polite to newcomers, Sesmar." He said she shouldn't act like an old woman. Sarah asked Prospero to tell him something. He said she could be as tactless as Sesmar sometimes. Sarah was furious and screamed, "What?" Bill said they should be quiet. He couldn't concentrate. Sarah shouted at him to follow Hawkwind's example. Raja thought, Hawkwind, a celebrity among thieves. He looks at him as if he doesn't see a person in him, even reminds me of Yarmouth. Raja turned and said, "Master Tuck." He said, "You can call me Bill." What's the matter, young man? Raja went on. He appraised their things the other day. He'd been a great help to them. Doesn't he ever go to the shop to do that? It must be hard to appraise so many things. Bill asked, to Catlub's shop or something. He is a fraud. Prospero said that this elf runs his shop for fun and does not care about his customers. Sarah exclaimed furiously. The appraisal prices and the buyback prices for weapons are the same. Raja suggested, perhaps because he collects them and puts them on display? Sarah continued, he has no taste. Moradin smoked and said that he has a lot of legendary weapons, but they are all useless. He just collects junk. Well, everyone who comes to scale has some purpose, big or small. Can they blame him? Raja said, that. Then he thought that this applied to Yarmouth too. Moradin said to be careful. A powerful magical weapon can easily kill a person with its presence. Bill said, true words. Moradin smiled, oh well. Bill continued, but it is not the magical weapon that is dangerous, but the heart of the one who wields it. Many people mistakenly believe that by possessing such an artifact, they will be able to do great things. Miraja said, if only he had one. Sesmar said that it is not for nothing that they say that the sin of pride is the worst of sins. Sarah said that even priests have it. Miraja thought, like he figured out when the devil's stone shattered, it turned everyone around it into ashes or moved them. And they didn't disappear only because he didn't want Yarmouth to die. Magic items, using them thoughtlessly, is dangerous. Well then, Sesmar told him not to play with the blade. Scare away luck. Raja was surprised. What? Sesmar continued that he understood. He wanted to touch the new weapon, but it was better to relax and not bother his head. He thought, not to be proud, that means not bothering his head. He managed to survive, got a new dagger today. There's food in front of him, really. Why is he so worried? Sesmar said it doesn't look like he goes into dungeons. Where did he get that dagger? Raja said that he bought it. They know, today at Catlub's shop. Sesmar laughed and said that couldn't be. Moradin laughed and said, sister is a real headhunter. Bill supported that she was now preaching to Yarmouth. Raja said, it's not funny. By the way, is Annika really a priestess? Maybe she's a paladin or even a lord magister? Sarah said, no comment. She shouted, by the way, where is Yarmouth? She'll leave out the fact that he and Annika are eating together. How could he leave such a sweetie girl alone? She thinks so too, doesn't she, garbage? Sesmar said she was very hard on Yarmouth. Bill added that he wasn't such a bad guy. Sarah said that wasn't the point at all. Sarah asked that they saw the dungeon differently. He knew that, right? Sesmar asked what she thought Yarmouth saw. She went on to say that he saw darkness and white lines. Moradin asked if she really thought so. No, that couldn't be true. What kind of nonsense was that? Sesmar said she was amazing. Prospero said that Yarmouth was a magician like him. They saw things much deeper. Bill agreed that he was the most superficial person he knew. He couldn't see the essence if it were shoved into his eye. Raja thought everyone who came to this city had an agenda, big or small. Does this apply to Yarmouth? Where did he come from? What did he want? Even without his memories, he still braves the dungeon. Is it because he's lost everything? Raja said thoughtfully that he's not even sure that Yarmouth is his real name. Moradin said, well, it's a nickname. He asked again, a nickname? Prospero said, of course, he hides his name too. Moradin continued, and even Mr. Catlub, although that name doesn't suit him at all. Every adventurer can take any name. Raja asked, seriously? Moradin added that he shouldn't worry. He'll come up with another nickname. He asked, do they all have nicknames? Sesmar agreed, his name is an ancient hero. Prospero said, a mage never reveals his real name. Sarah said she didn't, then she patted Garbage on the head and said if her parents really did name her that, she would beat them up. He asked, by the way, is Hawkwind a nickname too? He raised his hands, gesturing to him. Then he went to sleep, lay on the bed and thought, that man, I wonder who he is. Like a magician. He was faster than before, but without Annika, he would probably die. Garbage, Yarmouth, they were much faster than him and more experienced. In any case, he needed to get used to what he was like now. He remembered how the protagonist told him that he was the same, probably. Then he said, stop. The fact that he was still alive and that every day was tiring for him, was it all because of Yarmouth or thanks to her? And he thought, who are they? Where did they come from and where are they going? He doesn't know. No, and yet, who the hell is he? He doesn't know what will become of him. But he knows one thing. Tomorrow, they will again be in the dungeon. They go to the dungeon. The protagonist was eating in a tavern. The stranger who was sitting behind him clarified everyone was killed. He covered his ears with his hands and continued. The third floor, there was a hidden door deep in the third floor. He was the only one left. His comrades were still there. The protagonist finished eating and leaving, said, another crazy person. Raja was sitting next to an open chest when suddenly Garbage jumped out and he screamed, can she not bother him? She always jumps out unexpectedly. He turned to the protagonist and said that it was all his fault. Was he sure that Garbage could handle the dungeon on her own? If he was worried, he should go with her. He continued that he followed her, and this is what happened. Garbage ran and kicked the closed door. Miraja screamed, "Damn, she'll finally calm down." But she kicked again, and the door collapsed. They found themselves in a room with kobolds and slimes nearby. He looked ahead and thought, slimes and kobolds. They were lucky that there were mostly small enemies on this floor. The kobold swung his sword, but Miraja managed to dodge. Then he swung and with one blow of the sword cut off his head. Then another appeared, and Miraja said, "Well, nothing can be done." A fight ensued. They struck each other. Then Miraja kicked him with all his might and swung his sword. The kobold fell to his knees. He thought, there is no need to make big swings. You need to aim at the enemy's weak spot and strike and open. But you have to be careful. If you press a little too hard, the enemy will survive. He jumped up, swung again, then swung again. He remembered Annika's movements and said, "Her movements," and with one blow he cut him down. Pleased with himself, he thought that he had become better at this matter, that's for sure. He looked, and again there stood the kobold. Miraja shouted, "Damn, how scary." At that moment he thought, what was the point of her going into the dungeon alone? For some reason, he felt like she was looking for something or someone. If only she could talk. Miraja stuck his sword into it and hissed, "I don't care if it dies." He pulled out his sword and said, "That was the last one." Miraja turned and saw her running away. He yelled after her, "Hey." He crouched down next to the chest and said, "Damn, if she has something to say, she should just say it." Miraja tried to open the chest and thought, why do monsters and treasure chests keep appearing? He understands, it's a dungeon, but still. At this time, Garbage came up and put her foot on the chest. He asked, "What is she doing?" "It's time to open this damn chest." At this time in the tavern, the protagonist asked Sesmar to keep him company for a while. He answered, "No problem." The protagonist thanked him and asked when they could start. Sesmar asked when he would be needed. He answered, "It's not urgent, but the sooner the better." He supposes if. Then Garbage ran into the tavern and immediately stretched her hands to the table. Miraja came in after her and told her to at least tidy herself up a little. She was covered in blood and mucus. She saw a plate of food and began to eat greedily. The protagonist told him to order what he wanted. Miraja said that he needed meat. Sesmar said that he was already used to this. By the way, how can he let her go alone? The protagonist answered that she can go anywhere at any time. It does not concern him. In any case, there is someone to look after her. And she herself will not tell where and why she goes. Sesmar asked where they are going. The protagonist said, "To the 3rd floor. It's a shallow level. What do they think?" Recently, a group of adventurers found a tomb with a secret door deep into the 3rd floor. They were trapped by a bomb. Half the group was destroyed. The rest were saved by the return of the priest. They left their equipment and the bodies of their comrades there. Sesmar scratched his chin with his hand and thoughtfully said, "The priest survived the bomb explosion?" "It could have been the high priest. In any case, it is surprising. So there are a lot of corpses and loot?" He asked. "Did Sister Annika tell him that?" He replied that he heard it from a drunk who clearly wanted to be heard. Sesmar said, "Suspicious." The protagonist agreed. Then they began to discuss the upcoming. Sesmar said, "Okay, sounds tempting. He's in. Bertie is on a break and he could use some time to do something." The protagonist thanked him. Then he asked if he wanted to join Miraja. He answered, if he could make money on it. The protagonist replied that he could not guarantee it. Miraja asked how many there would be. Not 6 people, right? There's an unspoken rule that the number of adventurers in a party entering a dungeon should not exceed 6. It is said that this is due to many reasons, such as the width of the passages and the size of the tombs. But in reality, this rule is in effect for only one reason. If you enter the dungeon in a large group, everyone will die. This is a rumor, but no one who dared to go into the dungeon in a large group really returned. So the best choice is 6 people or less, and the corpse will be counted as well. Miraja thought, now he understands why Yarmit acted alone before. The protagonist replied, there will be 3 of them. Will he go? At this time, Garbage bit off a piece of meat and tried to shout something. The protagonist turned to her and said, I understand. Miraja was surprised. Does he understand her? Sesmar raised his hand and showed that there will be 4 of them. The next day. Dungeon, 1st floor. A lot of people gathered in that place. Miraja said, as usual, there are a lot of people at the entrance. They walked through them, and Miraja asked in surprise, what were they doing? The protagonist answered, healing their wounds. Adventurers sleep in the stable, recuperate, so that they can then use healing spells in the dungeon. Miraja asked, but a healing spell can only be used once a day, right? The protagonist continued, that's why they have to go back and forth for several days from the stable to the dungeon and back. Miraja asked, seriously? He understands why they do this, because of the lack of money. Anyway, his situation is much better now than before. Before, he did not have time for any observations. In his previous group, there was no such thing as healing. It was considered useless, and resurrection was generally something impossible. It was cheaper to find someone new, for example him or that girl, Garbage. There are a lot of options for replacement. Sesmar raised his hand, clenched his fist and said, then he will show him what the best cure in the world looks like. He said, "O great shield, let it come quickly from the outside." A bright light began to emanate from Sesmar. Raja tried to cover his face with his hands, hiding it from this bright light. They were very surprised, and Raja asked, "What was that?" Sesmar replied that this was how a good priest would have read the great shield spell before the start, if they had one. The protagonist said, "Good try, Sesmar." Raja thought, so this was a joke? He replied, "Protection does not always mean increased durability, they can relax." He thought, perhaps he wanted to defuse the situation since he started joking. And he continued, if they know where they are going, then why can't they just use a teleportation spell and transport themselves? Like with the Devil's Stone, the thing was certainly ominous, but it is still a pity that he lost it. Sesmar said, "Hey, this is a top-level spell." Raja was surprised. Really? He said that even Prospero doesn't have it. He's not even sure that it still exists among them. Teleportation is a secret art for moving between dimensions. Legends are told about it. It's different from the priest's return, because with teleportation, you can instantly go anywhere. They walked down the hallway, and the protagonist said that spells are valuable. They kept walking, and Raja thought they weren't that far from the entrance, and yet they couldn't see all the adventurers that were there. It was like the dungeon had swallowed the adventurers, but no, it had swallowed them. Then Sesmar saw Garbage kill it with one blow. He said that she has excellent skills. She was standing on the corpse, satisfied, holding a sword in her hands. Raja was sitting near the chest, trying to open it. Sesmar continued, "She killed not only monsters but also people, right?" and patted her head. Garbage was very unhappy about this. Raja stood up and rubbed his hands and said, "Well." He immediately thought, picking the lock is not a problem. The problem is to determine the type of trap. He said that if they had a priest with clairvoyance, it would be easier. Yarmut, why didn't he take Annika? The protagonist replied that she would probably charge him. They had enough people anyway. With the two of them, going through the first and second floors is easy. You can rest in the back. Sesmar added, of course, spells are valuable. But you shouldn't be stingy. After all, we are talking about their lives. That's why they always grumble at him. The protagonist replied that they don't grumble, but rather preach. Earlier Annika asked, "Isn't it better not to know?" He added, "About what?" She continued, "About his past. She heard about what happened the other day." He said she met the situation with Raja's client. She agreed and continued that she knew about today's commotion too. The target was either him or the girl. No doubt it was dangerous, either for him or her. The protagonist added, maybe for both of them. Annika crossed her arms and said that sometimes it was better to be ignorant. He said that he didn't think so, and thanked her for her concern. But any decision had to be made consciously. It was impossible to make a choice without knowing the circumstances. Annika said that she knew he would say something like that. Then she added that this was his path. He had known good and evil too. He was not pure, but he was not completely corrupted either, so he could choose neutrality. The protagonist said that he would probably just wander somewhere in the middle. She added that anything was possible. He said that if you think about it, they never suggested that he leave Garbage. She got angry, sure, just let him try. If he leaned towards evil, she would still pull him back in. The MC said that it would be better if they pushed him down and finished him off. Annika asked, shouldn't he be grateful? He thanked her, and then he called her and said that she had made 2 mistakes. But he didn't finish. He heard the click of the lock and asked, did he succeed? Raja wiped the sweat from his forehead and answered, of course. Poisonous needles can be dealt with in a jiffy. Then Garbage ran up to the open chest and began to take out treasures from there, throwing them up. Having taken out 1 coin, she approached the protagonist and said that it was for him. The protagonist examined the coin and patted Garbage on the head in gratitude. Raja was tired and thirsty, and he decided to drink. Then Sesmar said that he shouldn't drink until they passed into the next tomb. Raja asked, is it still a long way to the 3rd floor? Sesmar answered, they could use the elevator, but they don't want to miss the treasures along the way. And yet, even though he complains, he looks like he's used to it. Raja thoughtfully said, well, it's not as hard as fighting a dragon. He started to remember and thought, it was tough, he wouldn't want to experience it again. But as an adventurer, he certainly couldn't avoid it in the future. He said he'd wanted to ask for a long time. The protagonist said for him to ask. Raja continued, is he a mage who can fight, or a fighter who can use magic? MC said, who knows? They followed further and suddenly ran into a wall. Sesmar asked, is it here? The protagonist answered apparently. Raja tried to make a hole in the wall with a knife, and when he finished, he said, he thinks this is okay. Then Garbage ran up, swung and struck with her sword, and Sesmar said, now it's the work of the vanguard fighters. The door fell. The protagonist called everyone inside. Sesmar said that he was their leader, so he should go forward. He agreed, but then Garbage flew into the doorway. Then everyone came in and looked around. Raja asked, are there no enemies here? MC went further and answered that it was possible and suggested looking for corpses. Raja asked, "What about equipment and treasures?" The protagonist answered that he knew the answer to this question. Raja thought, "Is this a compliment?" Sesmar said, "There are no monsters and no corpses either." The protagonist added that he knew it would be like this.